I didn't mean to kill him. He hired me, Butch screamed as he was cuffed, spilling everything about the $50,000 deal. He told me to hit him. It was supposed to be a suicide. Miller smiled coldly in triumph. The steady drizzle, so characteristic of Seattle, seemed endless, draping the upscale Queen Anne neighborhood in a bleak gray veil. On the ornate iron gate of a multi-million-dollar mansion, a glaring orange sheet of paper had been crudely slapped into the rain-soaked mahogany surface. Notice of default. The wind cut through in icy gusts, yet it was still not as cold as the atmosphere inside the vast living room. Jack slammed his latest model iPhone onto the glass table, the dull impact echoing sharply through the quiet space. He had just ended a call with his personal attorney. Both hands clutched his head as he raked through hair already streaked with gray. Chapter 7. He's telling me to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy? Jack snarled, his voice hoarse from alcohol and cigarettes. I built this empire from nothing, and now those Wall Street bastards want to take everything because of a few damn crypto crashes and dead real estate deals? $5 million. That was the crushing debt hanging over his head like a guillotine blade. Jack looked up, his bloodshot eyes drifting toward the Italian imported velvet sofa. There sat Lily, his young, beautiful wife, calmly filing her elaborately jeweled nails. She appeared completely immune to the financial storm about to wipe them out. Jack, could you keep your voice down? Lily gently blew on her fingertips, her tone cold, edged with irritation. I've had enough humiliation for one day. Do you know what it feels like to stand at the Nordstrom checkout, surrounded by Seattle socialites, while your American Express black card gets declined? The clerk looked at me like I was a thief. Jack froze, staring at his wife. Not a word of concern, not a trace of fear about losing their home. In Lily's eyes, pride mattered more than survival. His despair hit bottom, until his gaze landed on the fireplace mantel. There stood a photo of Sarah, his daughter from his previous marriage. She was smiling brightly in the uniform of a prestigious Ivy League university. She was his only pride, the last light in his life. He could not let Sarah drop out because of his failure. The next day, Jack sat across from a senior insurance broker in a wood-paneled office in downtown Seattle. A thick stack of documents lay on the desk between them. Are you absolutely certain, Jack? The company's legal representative adjusted his glasses, studying him closely. This is the largest personal life insurance policy we offer. Face value, $5 million. I want the double indemnity clause, Jack said, his voice eerily calm. If I die in an accidental death, that becomes $10 million, correct? Correct. $10 million paid to the beneficiary, your wife, Mrs. Lilly. The lawyer tapped a small line of text on the final page. But I must remind you of the golden rule of our industry, the suicide clause. Within the first 2 years from the signing date, if you take your own life, the company will deny all payout. Your wife won't receive a single cent. Jack picked up his Mont Blanc pen and signed without hesitation. A frightening resolve flickered in his eyes, perfectly concealing the calculations surging through his mind. Don't worry, Jack smirked faintly. I love life. I'm not planning to die. In the weeks after the insurance contract was locked away in the safe, the atmosphere inside the mansion at 42 Queen Anne Road grew even more suffocating than Seattle's gray skies. Jack changed completely. The refined man who once sipped 18-year single malt scotch now slumped every night over cheap Jim Beam bourbon grabbed from a 7-Eleven. During the day, Jack often disappeared. He drove the SUV out, but not to his office or meetings. Using a GPS tracker secretly installed on her husband's car, Lily saw that he spent hours at Discovery Park, where sheer cliffs plunged straight down into the icy Puget Sound, waves crashing violently against jagged rocks below. Lily watched all of this, but not with the worried eyes of a wife afraid of losing her husband. She watched with the alertness of a predator afraid of being robbed first. Is the old man hiding a slush fund or planning to run off with another woman? In material-driven American marriages like theirs, Lily had learned one rule well: trust is suicide. One late night, with Jack passed out drunk on the living room sofa, his iPhone slipped from his hand onto the carpet. Lily quietly walked over and picked it up. The passcode was still their wedding date, a bitterly ironic detail now. Her manicured fingers flew across the screen. She skipped messages and emails, going straight to Safari's browser history. Lily's pupils contracted. The search results stared back like a pre-written death sentence. Statistics on single-vehicle accident fatalities in Washington state, how to prevent airbags from deploying in a crash, cliffs in Seattle over 100 feet high, insurance accident investigation timeline. She set the phone down, her hands trembling, not from fear. She looked at Jack, snoring loudly, reeking of alcohol. Every scattered piece suddenly locked perfectly into place. The $10 million policy, accidental death clause, his despair, the cliff visits. Her husband was planning his own death. He intended to stage an accident to scam the insurance company, leaving behind a fortune to save his reputation and his daughter's future. Instead of waking Jack, crying or calling 911 to stop his madness, Lily slowly stood up. She stepped onto the glass balcony and stared at the rain-blurred horizon. A cold, cruel smile formed on her red lips. In her mind, there was no image of Jack broken at the bottom of a cliff. There was only South Beach, Miami, golden sunshine, poolside parties, young, muscular men. $10 million. That money was her ticket to freedom. If Jack wanted to die so she could be rich, who was she to stop such noble sacrifice? She would let him do it. In fact, she would help him make sure it succeeded. The weak jingle of a doorbell rang out, nearly drowned by the roar of container trucks barreling along Interstate 5. The Rusty Spoon Diner sat alone on the southern outskirts of Seattle, a filthy place reeking of burnt grease and stale cigarette smoke. White-collar men like Jack never came here. That was exactly why he chose it. Jack pulled his baseball cap low and moved quickly to the darkest corner booth. Sitting there was Butch, a long-haul truck driver with a massive build, a grizzled beard streaked with gray, and bloodshot eyes carved by chronic sleeplessness. Butch owed Las Vegas loan sharks hundreds of thousands from gambling losses. Jack knew the man needed money more than he needed life. "You bring the goods?" Butch asked, his gravelly voice rumbling as he toyed with a cup of cold black coffee. Jack didn't answer. He reached into his leather jacket, pulled out a thick envelope and a gleaming metal watch, and slid them across the table. 50,000 cash, and this, Rolex Daytona Paul Newman. Market value at least another 20 grand. All for Friday night, Jack whispered, his tone as cold as a real estate deal. Butch stared at the cash, his throat bobbing. He lifted the watch, greed glinting in his eyes under the flickering neon lights. "What's the plan?" he asked, slipping the watch into his flannel shirt pocket. Jack unfolded a paper map, his trembling finger pointing to a red circle. "Mountain Pass Road 9. Locals call it Dead Man's Curve. A storm is forecast Friday night. Exactly 11 p.m., I'll drive the black SUV in from the east. When the light turns red, I won't stop. I'll drive straight into the intersection." Jack looked directly at Butch, his gaze terrifyingly steady. Your job is to drive that 18-wheeler in from the north, hit the driver's side, a T-bone crash. No brakes, no swerving. Make sure the impact is strong enough to end everything instantly. Butch swallowed hard, sweat breaking on his forehead despite the diner's blasting AC. You really want to die for insurance money? Sometimes a man is worth dead more than alive, Jack said with a bitter smile, the collapse of the American dream etched deep into it. Do it clean. My wife will wire the rest after it's done. The deal was over. Jack stepped out into the freezing night rain, leaving behind a trembling trucker counting cash. His own death warrant had just been signed. Independence Day, July 4th, arrived in the Queen Anne neighborhood amid the booming explosions of fireworks and the acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with grilled BBQ meat. In the backyard of the neighbors, the Abernathy family, a traditional outdoor party was in full swing. American flags were planted everywhere, cold beer sat packed in ice chests, and neighbors clustered together chatting about politics or housing prices. Lily appeared in a pristine white sundress, a chilled glass of Chardonnay in her hand. She blended into the group of housewives standing by the pool, subtly steering the conversation toward her husband. Jack stood off in the distance, grilling slightly burnt burgers, his eyes vacant as he stared into the flames. "Oh my God, just look at Jack," Lily sighed, deliberately raising her voice just enough for Martha, the nosiest woman on the block, to hear clearly. "Lately, he's been worrying me to death. The pressure from work has almost completely drained him." Martha raised an eyebrow, her curiosity obvious. "What's going on, dear? He looks absolutely exhausted." Lily took a sip of wine, her eyes shimmering with a look of quiet resignation. "Insomnia, Martha. He hasn't slept a full night in ages. What's worse, he keeps insisting on driving around at midnight to relax. I've hidden the car keys several times, but he gets so irritable. I'm afraid he'll fall asleep at the wheel one of these nights without realizing it." The lie flowed smoothly, like a script rehearsed 1,000 times. Lily was planting a perfect narrative in the minds of potential witnesses. If Jack died in a car accident, it would be due to exhaustion, a fatigue-related accident, absolutely not suicide. This story would become a solid shield, protecting the $10 million insurance payout from the scrutiny of investigators. At that moment, Jack walked over. He had no idea he had just become the centerpiece of a carefully staged performance. He looked at Lily, his heart twisting with guilt. He was about to leave her alone in this world. Jack wrapped an arm around his wife's waist, placed a gentle kiss on her forehead, and whispered, "Are you okay, Lily? I'm sorry I haven't been myself lately." Jack's tender, remorseful gesture only made Lily's act more convincing in everyone's eyes. She leaned into his chest, offering a weak smile to the neighbors, but the hand behind him clenched the glass so tightly her knuckles turned white. Beneath the sky blazing with fireworks celebrating freedom, Lily was also waiting for her own freedom, the freedom bought with the life of the man holding her in her arms. The digital clock on the nightstand blinked 2 a.m. Friday morning. Outside, the storm was beginning to form, the wind howling through the window cracks like a mournful wail. Jack was sleeping heavily in bed, his breathing labored from the mix of hard liquor and the mild sedative Lily had carefully crushed and stirred into his warm milk earlier. Lily opened her eyes. In the darkness, her blue eyes showed no trace of sleepiness. Instead, they gleamed with a terrifying clarity. She gently pulled back the covers and stepped out of bed. Lily changed out of her silk nightgown into tight black athletic wear, tied her hair back neatly, and slipped on rubber gloves. She moved through the spacious house as silently as a feral cat stalking prey. She descended into the vast garage where Jack's glossy black Mercedes SUV sat looning like a hibernating beast. This was the car Jack would drive tonight, his final journey. Lily switched on a small flashlight, its beam sweeping across the dusty tool rack Jack had bought purely for show. She reached for a heavy-duty bolt cutter. Holding the cold metal in her hands, Lily approached the vehicle. She didn't crawl under the car immediately. She stood there, studying it, calculating. Jack's plan was to let a truck crash into him, but Lily was a perfectionist. What if the driver panicked and didn't hit hard enough? What if the airbags deployed and saved Jack's life? If Jack survived but became disabled, the insurance money would turn into medical bills and she would have to bury her youth pushing a wheelchair for a useless old man. No, Jack had to die. He had to. Lily slid under the car, the stench of oil and rubber hitting her nose, making her grimace in disgust. She located the brake line, the lifeline of the safety system. She positioned the jaws of the bolt cutter around the rubber-coated metal line. She didn't cut it clean through. If she did, the brake warning light would come on as soon as Jack started the car, and he would notice. Instead, she squeezed hard, creating a deep fracture, almost severed, but still barely held together by a thin outer layer. "Perfect," Lily whispered, a twisted smile forming in the darkness beneath the car. With this damage, the brakes would still work under normal driving, but if Jack slammed the brakes in a panic stop, the sudden pressure would cause the weakened line to burst. The brake pedal would become useless, and the car would shoot forward like a bullet without a target. If Jack's planned collision failed, the 100-foot cliff would finish the job. Lily wiped the sweat from her forehead, cleaned up the scene, and placed the bolt cutter back where it belonged, convinced she had committed the perfect, traceless crime. The winter storm from the Pacific slammed into Seattle more violently than forecast. Rain lashed against the mansion's reinforced windows like invisible whips, and the wind screamed through the cedar trees in the garden, creating eerie, soul-calling howls. Jack stood in the main foyer, wearing an ash-gray overcoat. His face looked pale under the crystal chandelier, visibly hollowed, yet his eyes held a strange calm, the calm of a condemned man who has accepted the walk to the gallows. "I have to go meet a partner in Bellevue," Jack lied, his hoarse voice struggling not to tremble. "A venture capital fund agreed to meet late. If this deal works out, we'll keep the house, Lily." Lily rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her husband. Tears streamed down her face, smearing her expensive mascara. Her body trembled violently in his embrace. "The rain is so heavy, Jack. Maybe don't go," Lily sobbed, an Oscar-worthy performance. "I'm scared. I have a bad feeling." She released him, hurried into the kitchen, and returned with a silver Yeti thermos. "Take this, hot coffee I just made. Drink it so you stay alert." Unlike the night before, Lily did not add a single sedative to the coffee. She needed Jack fully awake. She wanted him awake enough to press the accelerator, awake enough to see death racing toward him, and most importantly, awake enough to feel the terror when he hit the brakes and the car refused to stop. Jack took the thermos, warmth spreading through his ice-cold hands. He gently kissed his wife's hair, breathing in the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5 one last time. In that moment, he felt like the worst man in the world for leaving her behind alone. "I'm sorry, Lily. I love you," Jack whispered, his voice breaking. "I'll be home early. Don't wait up." He turned and walked quickly toward the garage to hide the tear sliding down his cheek. The V8 engine of the Mercedes roared to life, shattering the silence. The garage door slowly lifted, revealing the pitch-black night and sheets of white rain. The car shot forward, its red taillights quickly swallowed by the darkness. The moment the sound of the car disappeared, Lily's sobbing stopped abruptly, as if someone had pressed the mute button on a remote. She straightened up, wiped her tears dry with a tissue in one clean motion. The grief vanished from her face, replaced by icy indifference. She walked to the bar, poured herself a glass of red wine, gently swirled it, and stared out into the blackened window. "Goodbye, Jack," she whispered, raising her glass toward the rain. "Don't blame me. This life is cruel." The Mercedes tore through the heavy rain, ripping apart the night on the winding mountain road leading down to Dead Man's Curve. The windshield wipers worked at full speed, but still couldn't clear the blurred view ahead. The speedometer crept up to 60 miles per hour. Jack gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. His heart pounded in sync with the roar of the engine. Only 2 miles remained until the meeting point. Butch and the 18-wheeler were waiting there to end his life. Jack took a deep breath, forcing himself not to turn back. Suddenly, the Apple CarPlay screen on the center console lit up, shattering the darkness inside the cabin. An iMessage had just arrived. Sender, Sarah, daughter. Jack glanced at it. He meant to ignore it, but a father's instinct made that impossible. He reached out and tapped the screen. Siri's electronic voice rang out over the drumming rain, reading the message aloud. "Dad, urgent news. I just got accepted to Yale. They gave me a 100% full scholarship, including living expenses. You don't have to worry about my tuition anymore. I love you so much, Dad. Sleep well." The car swayed slightly. Jack felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A full scholarship? Sarah didn't need the money anymore? For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. The crushing weight that had pressed on Jack's chest for months suddenly vanished. The only reason he had accepted death to secure his daughter's future was gone. Tears spilled from Jack's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. He burst into laughter, a crazed laugh echoing inside the narrow cabin. "I don't have to die," he screamed. "Damn it, I can file for bankruptcy. I can start over. I want to live." The will to survive surged stronger than ever. Images flooded his mind. Sarah in a graduation gown, quiet afternoons spent fishing together. He wanted to see his daughter graduate. He wanted to grow old. But brutal reality yanked him back instantly. Through the sheets of white rain, the blinding headlights of a massive truck appeared at the intersection ahead. The traffic light was turning red. Butch was coming, exactly as planned. "No, stop!" Jack screamed in panic. He didn't want to die anymore. He had to cancel his own death right now. Driven by pure survival instinct, Jack lifted his foot off the accelerator and slammed it down hard on the brake pedal. He threw his entire body weight into that stomp, praying the legendary German ABS system would save him, stop the car before the fatal white line. He waited for the piercing screech of tires against asphalt. He waited for the seatbelt to cinch tight around his chest. But nothing happened. The most terrifying feeling is not seeing death coming, but believing you can avoid it and realizing you cannot. As Jack's foot crushed the brake pedal, he expected firm resistance, the powerful grip of brake pads biting into steel discs to slow the 2-ton machine. But no, the pedal sank all the way down, soft and empty, like stepping on air. Pop! A dull, muffled sound erupted from beneath the car, one only seasoned mechanics would recognize. The brake line, already crushed by Lily, burst completely under the sudden pressure. Hydraulic fluid sprayed violently onto the soaked roadway. The braking system failed instantly. The Mercedes did not slow down. It continued charging forward at 60 miles per hour, skimming across the slick surface like a runaway monster. "Oh, God, no!" Jack screamed, his voice swallowed by the engine's roar. Straight ahead, Butch's massive Peterbilt tractor-trailer loomed at the intersection, blocking the entire road like a moving steel wall. Butch had timed it perfectly for the killing blow. In a split second of survival instinct, Jack stopped thinking about money or insurance. He yanked the steering wheel hard to the left, trying to slip past the narrow gap near the truck's rear, searching desperately for a way out. The sudden turn on the flooded road sent the SUV into hydroplaning. All four tires lost traction. The vehicle slid sideways, spinning completely out of control. Screech! Bang! The right side of the Mercedes slammed violently into the truck's solid steel rear bumper. It wasn't a head-on collision, but the force was enough to fling the SUV away like a toy. The window shattered, spraying shards like a rain of diamonds. The airbags deployed, smashing into Jack's face and leaving him stunned. But the nightmare wasn't over. The immense momentum hurled the vehicle off the roadway, tearing through the flimsy guardrail. The front end dipped downward, and then the entire car plunged off the road, free-falling into the pitch-black void of the 50-foot ravine below. The car flipped several times midair, smashing into jagged rock walls. The sound of tearing metal, twisting chassis, and splintering bones merged into a deadly symphony. At last, the vehicle landed upside down with a thunderous crash that shook the valley, then lay motionless at the bottom of the ravine. Rain continued to pour, washing over the gasoline leaking from the shattered fuel tank, mixing with the bright red blood flowing from the crushed driver's compartment. Harbor View Medical Center, the only Level 1 trauma center in Seattle, blazed with light in the stormy night. The blades of an airlift Northwest rescue helicopter tore through the sky as it landed on the hospital rooftop, carrying a mangled body pulled from the abyss. Lily burst through the emergency room's automatic doors, disheveled, hair soaked and tangled, wearing only one shoe. She had calculated every detail of this entrance. No makeup to show dark circles under her eyes, rain-soaked clothes to look like a frantic wife who had run through the storm searching for her husband. "Where is my husband? Please, Jack, where is he?" Lily screamed, rushing the reception desk, tears pouring like a downpour. Two patrol officers struggled to restrain her. She collapsed onto the cold hospital floor, sobbing Jack's name, moving everyone who witnessed it, from nurses to other patients, to tears. But deep inside her mind, a cold stream of thoughts ran alongside the crying. Please say he's dead. Please say time of death is $10 million. Miami. Freedom. She was waiting for the doctor to come out and shake his head sadly. That would be the moment she would faint from grief and wake up as a millionaire widow. 3 hours dragged by like a century. Finally, the operating room doors swung open. The chief neurosurgeon, reeking of antiseptic, stepped out, his face exhausted. He removed his mask and walked toward Lily. Lily sprang up, grabbing the doctor's coat, her voice trembling with hidden hope. "Doctor, He's gone, isn't he?" The doctor placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Mrs. Lilly, please stay calm. It's a miracle. Your husband, he's alive." The words "he's alive" struck Lily like a sledgehammer. The world spun. Her blood froze. Alive? After a 50-foot fall? How could he still be alive? Her perfect script had just cracked fatally. The doctor continued, unaware of the horror in her eyes. "However, you must prepare yourself. The impact destroyed the C3 and C4 cervical vertebrae. The spinal cord suffered severe damage. He is quadriplegic and has temporarily lost the ability to communicate. But the good news is his brain function is intact. He will need a caregiver for the rest of his life." Lily covered her face and let out a piercing cry. "Thank God, he's alive!" She collapsed against the doctor's chest, sobbing uncontrollably. No one knew those were the sobs of utter despair. Not only did she lose the $10 million, she was now chained for life to a paralyzed living corpse. 5 days after the accident, while Jack still lay unconscious in the ICU, tangled in tubes and wires, Lily's $10 million insurance claim at Pacific Life was flagged red, under investigation. The case handler was no ordinary desk clerk, but Agent Miller, a seasoned 50-year-old investigator nicknamed the Iceman. Miller had no interest in a widow's tears or orphaned children. He believed in only two things: data and physics. Miller appeared at the Seattle police impound lot. Wearing protective goggles, he plugged specialized equipment into the mangled Mercedes port to extract data from the black box, EDR, Event Data Recorder. Binary code streamed across Miller's laptop screen, revealing a strange truth that completely contradicted the initial theory. Throttle position, 0%. Brake pedal status, on, 100% pressure. Time to impact, 2.5 seconds. He hit the brakes, Miller muttered, frowning. If he wanted to kill himself, why slam the brakes in the final second? That doubt led Miller to the second piece of the puzzle, Butch, the truck driver. Using veteran investigative skills and the leverage of a powerful financial corporation, Miller quickly traced Jack's call records and GPS location to the shabby diner where Butch often hung out. Miller and the police raided Butch's motel room. The drug-addicted driver, already terrified that he had killed someone, collapsed immediately. "I didn't mean to kill him. He hired me," Butch screamed as he was cuffed, spilling everything about the $50,000 deal. "He told me to hit him. It was supposed to be a suicide." Miller smiled coldly in triumph. He carried a thick file to the hospital and slammed it on the table in front of Lily and her private attorney. "The case is closed, ma'am," Miller said flatly. "Your husband hired someone to kill himself for insurance money. This is fraud. Under the exclusion clause, we deny the entire $10 million payout." Lily's face drained of all color. She was about to lose everything. But at that very moment, her cunning lawyer, hired to fight to the end for his commission, turned the tables using Miller's own data. "Wait," the lawyer adjusted his glasses, pointing at the EDR chart. "You claim my client's husband wanted to commit suicide. Then explain this. Why did he apply 100% braking force? This data proves that at the last moment, Jack regretted it. He abandoned the suicide. He tried to stop the car. What happened afterward was unintended. Legally speaking, the moment he hit the brakes, the suicidal intent ended. This was an accidental crash because the car failed to stop." The razor-sharp argument made Miller hesitate. If Jack had changed his mind and wanted to live, then the death or injury was an accident, and the insurance still had to pay, unless Miller could prove why the car didn't stop despite full braking. Refusing to accept defeat, Agent Miller decided to play his final hand. He summoned a top forensic mechanical team from Quantico to autopsy the Mercedes a second time. This time, they weren't searching for electronic data, they were looking for physical interference. Under the blinding halogen lights of the forensic garage, the car was lifted on a hydraulic jack. A specialist pointed to the brake fluid line assembly behind the left rear wheel. "Look closely, Miller," the expert said, handing him a magnifying glass. "This brake isn't natural. If excessive pressure caused it, it would burst from the inside out like a flower. But here, there's a clean, sharp notch cutting through 80% of the line before it snapped." Miller narrowed his eyes. Under the microscope, the edge of the cut glinted with traces of compressed metal. "It's a cut. Someone used bolt cutters to sabotage it before the car moved." Immediately, a search warrant was issued for the Queen Anne mansion. Police tore through Jack's garage. Inside a dusty red Craftsman toolbox, something Jack bought purely for show and never used, they found a heavy-duty pair of bolt cutters. The crime lab results returned 24 hours later and delivered a fatal blow to Lily. On the rubber handles of the cutters, technicians found clear fingerprints. But the terrifying part was this: they were not Jack's. Jack was a businessman who only held pens and wine glasses. His hands never touched grease. Those fingerprints belonged to Lily. Overconfident that Jack would die and the car would be destroyed at the bottom of the ravine, combined with panic on the rainy night, Lily had wiped down the tool but carelessly missed the inner grip grooves where sweat and fingerprints remained. Agent Miller assembled the entire horrific picture in his mind, a chill running down his spine at the cruelty of human nature. Jack planned to kill himself, Miller said to his colleague, his voice grim. But his wife, she didn't just know about it, she wanted to make sure he had no way back. Jack chose life at the last second. He hit the brakes to return, but the woman who shared his bed took away his final chance to survive. From an insurance fraud case, the file was officially reclassified under a new charge: attempted murder. The conference room at the Seattle Police Department was suffocating with tension. Sitting across from each other were Lily and her high-profile defense attorney, Arthur Vance. On the other side sat Agent Miller and a representative from the district attorney's office. Miller opened with a crushing blow to Lily's ambitions. He slid a legal document across the table. Mrs. Lilly, this is the official notice from Pacific Life. Your $10 million insurance policy has been completely voided. Reason? Insurance fraud and criminal conduct. You can't do this, Lily hissed, gripping the edge of the table. My husband is paralyzed. We need that money. The policy became invalid the moment your husband hired someone to crash the car, Miller replied coldly. And, more importantly, the exclusion clause clearly states no payout if the beneficiary intentionally causes harm to the insured. The fingerprints on the bolt cutters say everything. Not only did Lily lose the money, she now faced a charge of attempted murder in the first degree. However, America is a paradise of legal loopholes if you have a lawyer good enough. Arthur Vance rose, straightening his silk tie. He knew the police only had circumstantial evidence. Your Honor, Vance said calmly, my client's fingerprints on the tool only prove she touched it at some point, perhaps while cleaning the garage. They do not prove she cut the brake line that night. He leaned forward, delivering a sharp psychological counterstrike. Jack wanted to die. He hired someone to hit him. Who's to say Jack himself didn't cut the brakes to ensure his suicide plan succeeded 100%? You have no video of my client cutting anything. The victim, Jack, cannot speak to testify. You cannot prove murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Silence filled the room. The prosecution knew Vance was right. If this went to a jury trial, jurors could easily be swayed by the image of a fragile wife and the lack of direct evidence. The risk of losing was high. In the end, a bitter plea deal was reached. Lily would not be prosecuted for attempted murder due to insufficient evidence in exchange for pleading guilty to reckless endangerment and receiving a suspended sentence. Lily avoided prison. She walked out of the police station and breathed in the air of freedom. But the relief vanished instantly. The bank had issued a foreclosure notice. The house, the cars, everything was auctioned off to pay Jack's creditors and the enormous legal fees owed to Vance. Lily was left with nothing. But the worst verdict came from family court. Because Jack was quadriplegic and legally incapacitated, Lily, as his only legal spouse, was appointed court-appointed guardian. She was legally obligated to care for him. If she abandoned him, she would go straight to prison for felony neglect of a disabled person. Lily realized she had won the battle of freedom, but lost the war of her life. 5 years later. Gone was the affluent Queen Anne neighborhood with its manicured lawns. The scene shifted to a rundown housing project in White Center, an area notorious for high crime in South Seattle. Police sirens wailed in the distance, mixed with blaring rap music from the upstairs unit and the stench of trash that hadn't been taken out in days. Inside a cramped, moldy one-bedroom apartment, Lily struggled through the life she once despised. The elegant, fashionable woman she had been now looked 10 years older. Her once shiny blonde hair was dry and tangled, hastily tied with a stretched-out rubber band. The crystal-studded nails she once took pride in were now cut short, rough, cracked, ruined by cheap cleaning chemicals. "Open your mouth! Hurry up, I don't have all day!" Lily snapped, roughly shoving a spoonful of watery oatmeal into the mouth of the man sitting motionless in an old wheelchair. It was Jack, or rather what was left of Jack. Locked-in syndrome had turned his body into a living prison. He was completely paralyzed from the neck down, unable to speak or move even a finger. But his mind worked perfectly. He heard everything, understood everything, and felt every ounce of coldness and every venomous insult Lily poured onto him each day. "Why don't you just die already, Jack?" Lily muttered as she wiped oatmeal from his chin with a coarse rag. "You lie there enjoying yourself while I slave away for you. The money's gone, my life is ruined, and it's all your fault." She slammed the bowl onto the table and turned to wash the dishes, plates clattering with pent-up rage. She didn't dare leave him. She didn't dare care for him. Social workers and the court still monitored her regularly. She was imprisoned by the very husband she had tried to kill. The camera slowly zoomed in on Jack's motionless face. In his deep, silent eyes, there was no gratitude, no helpless suffering. Instead, there was a chilling clarity. Jack remembered that night. He remembered hitting the brakes. That subtle snap when the brake line failed was not a natural rupture. As a former car enthusiast in his youth, he knew that feeling. And more importantly, days before the accident, he had seen Lily sneaking into the garage through a security camera he had secretly installed to monitor the housekeeper, something Lily never knew existed. He had seen her holding the bolt cutters. Jack knew. He knew everything. He knew Lily had cut the brakes to kill him. He knew how greedy she truly was. A single physiological tear slowly slid from the corner of Jack's eye, tracing down his sunken cheek. Then his paralyzed facial muscles twitched slightly, pulling the corner of his mouth into a crooked, twisted smile. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of revenge. He didn't die. He lived to become the unbearable weight crushing her life. Every day she cleaned his waste, every day she stared at this living corpse was another day of psychological torture. She wanted his money. She wanted freedom. Now she would have nothing except him. Forever. Jack blinked once, slowly, staring straight into the camera as if telling the audience, "We deserve each other."